Want to welcome everybody to the Plan Smart, Grow Strong, Why Job Planning is the Hidden Key to Landscaping Success webinar. This webinar is sponsored by Top Green by Turing and presented in partnership with your friends at Landscape Management Magazine. I'll just introduce myself quickly. My name is Seth Jones. I'm the editorial director of Landscape Management Magazine. It's the largest magazine dedicated to lawn care and landscaping professionals in the business. It's my job to keep my eyes peeled for the latest trends in the industry and alert our more than 125,000 readers to what is new. I'm joined by a panel of experts I'll introduce very soon, but before that, just a little bit of housekeeping. The webinar is going to start with a panel discussion. We will then have a demo, and finally, we'll open it up for a Q&A. We're going to try and keep things moving right along, but my attendees here have some questions that I've provided them, and that we'll bounce around with some topics. But in the meanwhile, keep in mind if you have some questions that you want to ask these guys yourselves. As a special bonus for all of our attendees, if you sign up for a demo within a week of this webinar, you'll have the opportunity to try Crew Planner for one of your managed properties for free of cost. And since I'm here, I'll want to add in as well. If you visit landscapemanagement.net, click on the subscribe link, and would be happy to send you guys a subscription for our magazine. So now I'd like to introduce our panelists. We'll start off with Ben Collinsworth, who is the Director of Operational Tech and Sustainability at Yellowstone Landscape. Ben began landscaping at age 13 in Dallas, received a degree from Texas A&M in horticulture and landscape architecture in '99. He then worked with a private company in Austin after college for 2 years. That company sold to True Green Lawn Care. He started his own company in 2001, grew it over 17 years through Texas, and sold it to Yellowstone in 2019. And something pretty cool you should know about him is that he recently got to tour Jay Leno's garage with Jay Leno in tow, and he's a car nut, so that was a pretty big deal. So, hey, Ben, welcome to the panel. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Seth.
Absolutely. Up next, I got Brian Moores. He has worked in the landscape industry for over 45 years and now is a private consultant to landscape companies big and small through his company Moores Enterprises. In his last 20 years, Brian has worked to change the industry through technology. Most recently, he was involved in the establishment and growth of Aspire Software. Today, he's working with new technology startups like Top Green to continue his vision to change the industry through the use of technology. Hey, Brian, it was great meeting you last week at Elevate in person. Thanks for being here, and thanks for your help.
All right. Yeah, good being here, Seth. Good to see you again.
Great. All right, next up, I'll go over to Michael Mayberry. He is the Director of Customer Success for Scythe Robotics. He has spent his entire career in the green industry. After serving as CTO in a landscaping company, he transitioned to the manufacturing side to continue to get landscapers to adopt new and helpful technologies. Something fun you should know about Michael is that for a few years in his mid-20s, he lived on a sailboat sailing between Key West, the Bahamas, and Daytona Beach. Michael, I'm sorry that you're slumming with me right now on a webinar, because that sounds pretty awesome. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
For sure. And then I'll also introduce Sashi Kumar. He's the founder and chief revenue officer of Top Green by Turing. He's an entrepreneur focused on building innovative software platforms that empower landscaping companies with operational intelligence, efficiency, and balanced productivity. His passion lies in combining technology with real-world insights to solve industry challenges. And something to know about Sashi is that he spent 17 years in the oil and gas industry working on automation and software before transitioning over to our side, the green industry. Hey, Sashi, how you doing?
All good. Thank you. Thank you for joining us here. Thanks.
Absolutely. And so, I'm guessing that Daniel, is he going to be able to join us? Do we know? Should I go ahead and introduce him, or should I'll come back to Daniel?
Yeah, we are trying our best to get him online.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Give a little bio on.
I'll go ahead and give viewers a little bio on who Daniel is. He is the CEO of Greenscapes Inc., where he focuses on building high-performing teams driven with driving strategic growth. He has over 2 decades of experience, and he has expanded his family's business reach and embraced innovation to deliver top-quality landscape services. His passion for leadership development and business growth keeps Greenscape at the forefront in the industry. And something to know about Daniel is he has skied 20 of the highest altitude ski resorts in North and South America, and he has a long list to conquer still. So we look forward to Daniel jumping on. I've had him on a panel before, so it'll be good to have Daniel back. So, guys, let me go ahead and open up with the questions now and get down, because obviously our viewers are here to learn about efficiency. And you know what I'd love to do is I'd love to start with Ben here. Ben, can you give me an idea, going back to your years in the industry from when you've had your own business, and and we're looking at the challenges that creating a job plan. How did you job plan in the past? Well, give me some of the, can you go back to those dark days of how you did it early on?
Like most people in landscape, my early job planning involved hiring good crew leaders and letting them do it. So I started landscaping when I was 13, and I did a lot of residential work. And when I got out of work for a really good, really awesome commercial landscape company in Austin, and they had a really awesome system down of training people, of having great crew leaders. They taught me that their strength lied in the knowledge of the people that work for them, and so I just kind of adapted that. And it to be honest with you, made me a little bit of a lazy operator because you just trusted that the guys knew what to do. You went and bid work. You assigned a certain amount of hours to it, told them to go there and do it within that amount of hours, and then just kind of toss it up, hope to God that it all worked out okay. And if the client didn't call, then success. So that's the way we kind of started out. And as we got further into training, TrueGreen back then was developing the JD Edwards stuff to come up with some standardization of things. And I was a part of the guys that was helping them come up with operational standards, which was funny because I was terribly slow and horrible at doing maintenance work. But it taught me that, hey, we should probably put a little more time and effort into the job planning side. And I didn't really do it until probably 10 years after I started my company did I get kind of serious on trying to understand the best way to operate on a property. So I did it just at the behest of the knowledge of the people that worked for me for a long time. And then maybe the last 7 years in business, I actually paid attention to how we operated. We did that through the old school manual way: show up, watch the crew work, map it down. I was lucky enough to have Ben and Ken from the advisor guys help me understand how to do that back then, and then map it out on our properties and understand the best way to do work. Then we would try to train the guys on doing that, go out there, find that we had the results right, and then quite frankly, just hope that they maintain that going forward. So that was kind of our best practice, but it worked as well as it could back then, and it got us a decent gross margin and a lot of maintenance work. But that was my history of work planning.
Sure. Brian, let me similar question for you, but can you tell me in your experience, was this a case of you just don't know what you don't know, and how far along has it come to today?
Yeah, Seth, a little bit of you don't know what you don't know, and like Ben said, right, it was about getting out there. I actually spent time on crews to try to understand back in the day, to try to understand best path of motion around a property, things like that, right? The best way to learn is just get out there and grunt away with them, and you gain a lot of respect from the crews as well when they see you out there trying to improve efficiencies, improve upon how you're doing things. And we used to, like Ben was saying, we used to instill that into our crew leaders, right? Is not, let's hit the hours, but let's beat those hours in how you're doing things out in the job site. And by being out there, I think it helped these crew leaders see and understand the different nuances maybe about a property that they didn't always get, but you could kind of educate them on. And so, people, the guys we have out mowing grass, they're great at what they do, but sometimes they just need a little help in understanding that. But I did, like Ben, I relied on my crew leaders after we got them well trained to really just take and do that job planning. I think what has happened with job planning today is not much different than it was back then, right? Guys are still doing it much in the same way today, which is why I think it's so important that we start looking toward technology for something like this. I remember I was working with Toby Massengale down at Massengale Services down in Baton Rouge, and Toby and I were actually doing, as Toby was learning Aspire, we were actually working on job planning for his crews, because he was doing it from a very manual perspective, taking the job sites planning it out, but it was taking him weeks, sometimes months, to get these job plans in place. And by then the season's half over, and I'm not really getting any efficiencies out of the crew till halfway through the season. Well, sometimes that could be too late. I've already lost hours and money on the front end, and now I'm trying to just play catch up to break even in the back end. And so it's really, I don't think the industry has done an extremely good job of it. I know a lot of companies have done it manually and have been very successful at doing it. And I think those companies have proven that there are more efficiencies to be gained on these properties, but the manual process it costs as much time and money as being inefficient on the job sites.
Well, you said it right there, time and money. You probably fear for the money you're losing in something like this that you might not be aware of. Sashi, let me ask you this, how when you look at and I don't want to leap forward and go light speed here, but just from what the guys are describing to today, how do you feel like these crews are learning, and how are they advancing based on the technology that's become available, and what's it like for them?
Yeah, so it's pretty much advanced, to say, as of now, because as Ben said, still there are a lot of traditional methods followed, where we do estimation for a property and we stick to the budgets, and the budgets are passed on to the crew, and we expect the crew leaders to be responsible and accountable for their jobs. So the crews do their best to meet the budgets, right? So always we have measures in place and softwares in place to ensure that we are meeting the budgets, right? So there is a close connect on the budgets and estimates and whether we are meeting it or not. So that's the state of art still actively used today, right? So still technology is a long play. It's a long way to get deep into the operations.
Okay, Michael, you've always been passionate about the maintenance side of the industry, but also for them advancing. I remember talking, you've been a source for our magazine for years now, and we always knew we could come to you and ask you about, hey, what's coming next? How do you see from your seat how the challenges of job planning and what robotics and the new technologies are doing to really move things along for these guys?
Yeah, so the analogy that I've been using a lot lately is the industry has been very used to a hammer and a nail, and for forever that's the way that we've just been getting work done. But as companies like Scythe and others, robotic mowers, electric mowers, we're introducing a new set of tools. So now we're handing landscapers a screw and a screwdriver, but they're still trying to use it like a hammer and a nail and not getting the effect that they're really looking for there. So job planning is very important in change management, especially as we're introducing new tools here. So because we're saying, hey, with robotics and with autonomy, you can reduce your crew size. People are very skeptical of that, and especially crew leaders are like, no, it's always taken me 3 people to do this work. I need 3 people to do this work, and I need these machines to make it happen. And so it's hard to convince people that there is a path forward if you can't show them that path forward before they start walking that path. And that's exactly what job planning does, is say, look, on paper, this is the way that it should work. Now, we all know once we get out there in reality, it may go sideways a little bit, and that's okay. We're learning, and these job plans are never stagnant. They're always improving. You're always taking what you've learned week over week to continue to tweak these job plans. But doing it this way illustrates to operators how this change is possible and how it can be done in the same amount of hours with the same efficiency, so that they're not getting dinged for taking longer on their jobs than they've been given for.
Okay, great. Ben, can you give me an idea? I don't know if there's a way to put like a number on this, like when you think about efficiency advancements. I don't know if you can like either tell me like, you know, hey, I could take this, you know, with proper job planning, you can take a crew from this size to this size, or it can go from this time to this time. Like, can you just give us some real world examples of things that you've seen from going from bad job planning to great job planning?
Yeah, we practice that on a multitude of different properties of different sizes. And if you average them out over the course of the year where we were really focusing on job planning, you know, the average savings for us was 15 to 20% of labor. So what it allowed us to do on a route, we didn't really reduce crew sizes because of it. But if you had a crew that had 12 properties in a week, you might be able to get 14, or you might be able to get them to come in earlier, or you might be able to have a better consistency and quality because they're able to spend more time doing some of the human elements that the clients really see, which is detail work or pruning of annual color or other things that we thought were high value added responsibilities for the crew, instead of just going out there and mowing grass and weed eating and edging, because that's where we picked up the most gain in the way that we performed the work, the way that the amount of steps we took on properties, planning out for the guys just so that they had less work to do on the same property because they didn't have as many non-value added motions. That's what we found on average between medium and larger sized properties. It's about 15 to 20% of labor.
Okay. Okay, great. So I want to go to Sashi with this, then Brian, if you want to follow up with it too, but I didn't mean to bury the lead here at all, because, you know, the name of the panel here is Plan Smart, Grow Strong, Why Job Planning is the hidden key to landscaping success. Sashi, do you want to talk to me some at this point just about, like, what advancements are you celebrating right now that you want people to know about, that what is it that's making them more efficient?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So basically, what's happening is there is a lot of heavy lifting happening in job planning. Job planning is not as why people are not doing job planning. It's not that they don't want to do. So there is some tasks around that we need to complete, right? So traditionally, how job planning is done, we do site visits, we understand the workloads, we do understand the complications and the difficulty level in the property, and we do script the jobs, right? So it needs some sort of detailed assessment. It might take a couple of weeks for us to get a detailed job plan per property. And as Michael said, job plans are not like a blueprint day one. We have to have feedback loops and continuously improve. That's a living document, right? Because we have several variabilities to it, like seasonal changes, skill levels of the laborers change, and type of equipments change. So there are a lot of variabilities pop in, and estimating every time with these variabilities would be very difficult, and it's a rigorous job, right? So how technology helps here is we are doing the heavy lifting here. So we do most of the variabilities input to the system, and the computer does the task much better than what we think, because certain things are more measurement based, very scientific in nature, right? So we plug in those factors and we expect the computer to generate the output. It can run the optimal paths for us. It can evaluate the change in production factors when we change the equipment types and stuff like that. So it does the heavy lifting, it does the basic math behind it, and it comes out with optimal solutions for the production team to take over from there. Obviously, we need to have the touch of the production team. They understand the job better, so they have to fine tune the base plan coming out from the software, right? So again, it's a human AI collaboration that we're talking about. AI does the heavy lifting. It understands the variabilities and helps to come with the base plan. And the human touch is very much essential to bring in how the company operates, what are the limitations. They know the limitations that they're going through, and they will do the best optimal thing that is not necessary for the job, right? So that's how we see this is an essential tool for this time of the period that we are right now, where we see it's a high frequency jobs that we do week on week, and we spend several hours in the site. And this is again, the technology is there. Why not use it to do it more efficiently, right? So
I
You wanna add?
think the key point there, Sashi, was it's not ever going to be, in my opinion, 100% AI or computer learned decisions, right? We always need that human element, right? Because there's nuances about our properties. There's slopes that we may not know about. There's Mrs. Smith doesn't want you running the backpack blower over in this area because it's going to wake the baby, whatever it might be, right? It's always going to require an element of human touch. It goes back to something Kevin Kehoe used to say when we were after we would sell a Spire to a client, and the client said, well, my business isn't getting better now that it's 2 months after they had the software. Well, they expected the software to do all the work for them, right? To make them the ham sandwich for lunch, as Kevin used to say. And really, again, the human element, we need that human element into good job planning, right? And who knows that better but the production guys, right? They've been out there, they understand it. So we ask them for their input. And I think in job planning, that's important as any part of an organization, because the more people are involved in things, and especially in the success of the company, the more loyalty you get out of these employees, et cetera. And so there's a lot of benefits to that, unknown benefits to this idea of job planning, right? The obvious ones are efficiencies, as Ben mentioned, right? We're getting more efficiencies, and we all know labor is a huge, element in how do we in our industry, how do we find more labor? But what, like Ben was saying, it's really about, in job planning, it's really about being able to increase revenue with the same labor pool, and maybe not just increase it by adding properties, but increase it by adding more enhancement work, whatever it might be, right? But now I have actually solved a labor problem, right? Because I'm getting more revenue with the same labor. And so I don't look at, job planning is just one piece of the reward a company can get from doing it and doing it well. And again, the time element of letting technology do it, right? Plug in your crew size, the number of pieces of equipment, and let technology kick out the results, because that's what computers can do, and then add that human element.
Okay, great. I want to ask both Michael and Ben this, and just in your experience, let's start with you, Michael. Do people resist this type of change when they want to see, when someone comes in and says, hey, I've got a better way to build this mousetrap, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's human nature to resist change, and especially when you have operators that have been doing the same work for years or decades, they're going to be very resistant to change because they get into a rhythm and they feel like that rhythm, because they've been hitting their hours, is sufficient. And a lot of times they are hitting the hours. And so the mindset is, well, I'm already doing great work, what do you mean it can get better? And I think that is always the challenge, that our industry as a whole is always looking to improve and to increase efficiencies, and there's always ways that we can be better. And so, like I was saying earlier, I think you have to prove out your concept to those operators first to get them to buy in. And a lot of times, as Brian was talking about, you got to go out there and work side by side with them and say, listen, I know you don't believe in this, but I believe in this so much that I'm going to go work side by side with you and show you that this is going to work. And after doing that a couple of times, they'll start to see that, you know what, change isn't necessarily always bad. And I think also setting the expectation of, hey, we're not looking to do this on every single one of your sites tomorrow. What we're looking to do is focus on this one particular site. Let's iron it out. Let's make sure the process works. Let's make sure that we have buy-in, and then we'll move on to other sites from there. But it's certainly a challenge to get people to do something different. And I think that the biggest buy-in is, like Brian said, just get out there and work with them. And listen, not everybody is going to be willing to make those changes. And at that point, you've got to look at, is that the right person to lead this crew? Because the change is necessary, and sometimes sometimes you just got to find different people who fit the direction that you want to go moving forward.
Okay, great. Ben, what would you like to add to that? Do you see resistance to change, and how do you what have you done?
Yeah, it's inevitable that the guys will give a lot of feedback and pushback up front. One, because they're just prideful and they just think that, listen, I've been doing this property for a while, and when I show up, this is the way it looks like it should be done to me. And so it's a collaborative effort where you got to say, I don't know everything. I just know that there's a certain way that math works and directional flow works on a property. And so I'd like to collaborate with you on why this might not work. You know, give them the opportunity to give feedback and to say why it's not working, and define what success looks like, which is, are we trying to get out the property faster? Or are we trying to be more consistent in the type of service that we give to the property? That way, regardless of what crew or what guy shows up, it's going to look the same way for the client. Or are we really just trying to reduce the amount of steps that you're taking when you're trying to service a property? So if you help define the goal for the guys and say, if we both agree that if you walk, 20% less steps on this property to weed eat, edge, and mow, that's a win. That's a win for all of us. If they buy into that definition of a goal, then they don't fight the process as much. So I find that you've got to explain to the guys why we're doing it. Let them give feedback on why, and make it a place where they feel comfortable giving feedback, that it doesn't have to be this way exactly, that it's a collaboration between you and I and the client feedback. And then they typically warm up to it a little bit more. But it's true, you do have to prove it. It has to go out and be proven in the field. You can't just do it in an academic sense. It's got to be shown to be true. And then once you have a few successes, the other people start to buy in a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with 20% less steps. I think anybody would take you up on that. So, all right, to all the attendees, we're going to just take a quick little, we're going to try and do a poll here. You're going to see a poll pop up. The question is going to be, do you currently use job planning / scripting in your company? When we're asking everybody to click and answer, so we can see how the room is doing on this. And then I'll also just tell you while you're voting, while you're considering that, I have several more questions for the guys, but we're a half hour into our panel here, so the demo is forthcoming soon. So hang out for that, because that's going to be pretty cool to see. And but I do have a few more questions for the guys. Let's see how the poll's going. All right. So if everyone has answered, let's see. All right, I'm going to keep the conversation going while we're working on the sharing the results here. And I want to talk about, let's get a little bit even more down into the technology side of this. And I want to ask everybody, if we could go around the horn on this, how do we feel about AI and how it's going to play a role in the future of the landscaping industry? Brian, I see you kind of smiling a little bit. Do you want to go ahead and start off with that one? You're on mute.
I think we're already seeing AI, right, in kind of the communication piece, right? And I talk to people that are using Chat GPT and looking at other things. I think it's inevitable, right, that AI is going to play a role in our industry as well. I think some of those areas are still unknown. A lot of things, but anything that, in my opinion, anything that's measurable is something that is probably can be generated. We can generate some sort of results through AI, right? And if I can get data into a computer, I can create knowledge, and that's kind of what AI is all about. And really, when it comes to job planning, where we're at with Top Green is at a very early stage, and we're doing a great job of showing early efficiencies on jobs. However, what's going to happen is AI is going to improve upon, as we see kind of maybe some results in how the guys are really actually performing out on those job sites. We're going to learn more and more, right? The computer, it's all about computer learning. The computer is going to learn more and more, and ultimately, right, the plan's going to get better and better. It's no different than the idea of constant improvement, right? Lean management approach, right? It's just going to constantly being improving. And again, it may not necessarily be improving on efficiency, and it might be improving on one thing that we haven't talked about is the quality, right? Consistency, in my opinion, also reflects in the quality of the job site, right? If somebody knows, and back to Mrs. Smith, right? If she knows you're going to be on her property and running by her window every day at 10 o'clock at the big HOA you do, right? She that's her expectation of that. And again, for her, that's an idea of client success and consistency. And again, if I show how to create efficiencies, maybe it's then understanding how much more we can do to improve on the quality at the job site and add that into the AI learning. I think there's, with the robotics, Michael and I I've been fortunate enough to have Michael as a good friend for years now, and Michael's so tech savvy that it's fun watching him in the robotics side of things and talking to him about what's going on over there. But I think, obviously there's going to be AI learning that's going to happen on that side of things. It's that the thing about it is the industry can't ignore technology. The industry has to embrace technology. And I think, I fought that fight with Aspire. As Michael mentioned, right? The biggest part of it was change management in that fight, and it continues to be a fight because the industry, we love our big heavy equipment, but a computer isn't recognized as a big heavy piece of equipment yet in this industry, but I think we're getting there. I think, and again, as AI brings, I don't think it's going to bring anything negative to the industry. Obviously, we can't necessarily replace labor, even with robotics, right? There's job planning plays into that whole robotics piece because, quite frankly, a autonomous mower can't mow an entire property. We need people there, and what is it that the autonomous mower can do, right, in the job plan, and what is it that we need the people to do? And again, those are all a part of the learnings and the efficiencies that are gonna happen here in the not too far off future.
Okay, great. Michael, why don't you go ahead and take that one? I'd like to really to hear from everybody on this. What would you think? How do you feel about artificial intelligence and its role in the industry?
Yeah, so I think AI is certainly a buzzword that this industry is hearing a lot more. Just coming out of Elevate, there was a lot of talk around that. And Brian just alluded to this too, but I think the other piece to this is ML, which is machine learning, and it's a type of AI, but it's what's really important for this type of process and how we're going to be able to automate this and use technology to do this, because every landscaper on this call probably does job planning just slightly different. So the first issue in automation is how do we get everyone to agree on pretty much one single way of doing this? And the way that we can do that is through machine learning, that we can feed computers thousands and tens of thousands, if not millions of points of data to say, this is the way that landscapers produce work. So we have to be able to capture that first. What is the process that people and machines are taking throughout a property so that a computer can start to actually learn how landscapers produce work? Once a computer understands how we're currently doing it and what the objective is, then computers can start to optimize for the most efficient ways. But without first understanding how the industry does it now and why it's done that way, the computer models would just spit out things that were not possible and very, very different that landscapers maybe are not willing to try because it's so completely different. So the first part of this really is the machine learning, and that's going to take time. And I think everybody needs to understand this isn't going to happen overnight because we can't collect those tens of thousands or millions of points of data overnight. It's going to take time for us to collect this, and then it's going to take time for the machines to start to understand what all of that data means and to start to make sense out of it. But I do feel in the next 1 to 3 years, this will become the way that people do it, because as we've talked about, it is very manually intensive at this point, and we've got people drawing lines in PowerPoint or trying to use the snippet tool to show the path of motion, and it's just very messy and not clear. So once we can get machines to understand this and automate the piece of it, it's going to make it so that there is no excuse to not do this process. It's just going to be executing on it.
Okay, great. Sashi, why don't you give us your feedback on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is definitely landscaping maintenance, especially is a good subject for AI. Why do I say that? Is here we have a huge repetitive task happening, and there is a lot of scope for us to learn what's happening, right? So what we are lacking today is the operational data sets, right? So we need a way to capture this operational data in real time, and it has to be crowdsourced, because we have crew in, crew out every day, and we have equipments in, equipments out every day, and we are visiting the same properties every day. So there is ample of opportunities for us to capture the data. Right, that's very essential, and definitely if we have those data, we can generate insights, we can improve and have a feedback loop, and we can train the machine, we can do ML, and obviously we're going to learn from what we're doing, right? So optimization comes from the core is the data here, right? So we need to capture it. So it's not that we don't have data. So right now, if you look at the softwares in the industry, there is some huge chunk of data sitting there in the servers, right? So we do know what properties we are serving. We do know how much hours we have to spend there, and we do know how much hours the crews are spending there. But what we want is more attributed data sets, right? So how much we need to, how much time we need to spend on mowing or edging or cleanup blowing. We need to capture in more detail, and have more attributes, so that we can increase the functional efficiency. So again, the whole purpose of this is we are working towards a sustainable landscaping. We are working towards improvising and getting optimal performances on the ground, because a huge number of labor, huge number of equipments, huge number of resources are used for these services, and we have to be responsible while performing this. So, and which is very much possible with the technology today that we have. And what essentially we need to do is capture this, organize the data, and build the insights required, and continuously improve the process, right? So that's the step that we are trying to make here. We are organizing the data, capturing the data, and trying to improve the way that we look into the operations.
Okay. Okay, great. Ben, how do you feel? AI, how's it affecting your job, and how do you feel it's going to affect the industry?
I've spent the last couple of weeks doing some of that planning, even in my position here, and I think it's easier to ask which parts of the job it won't touch, because guys are talking about operations. That's a pretty obvious use case too, but it's also in the indirect and overhead expenses, and tracking your invoicing and AR and your payables and your marketing and your touch points with clients. I mean, every single piece of the way that we do business is going to be greatly affected, and I hope influenced positively by the use of AI, because there's still so many mundane routine tasks that we do within our businesses, just from a business standpoint, that really humans shouldn't be spending time doing, because it is lacking of any needs for creativity like we should be using our brains for. So what I'm excited about when I go and see that, and we develop our 5 and 10 year outlook here at Yellowstone, is man, how can we make people's jobs better through our administrative and our receivables and our payables and invoice tracking and receipt hoarding and all the different things that we do on a regular basis for the thousands of people that work here. I get real excited because I think it's going to make for a better experience for the people that work for us. And that's a big part of retaining our people, just like we retain our clients. So I get real excited, but I think it's going to touch every single part of any part of our business that has a regular reoccurring task that just doesn't need a person involved. So if I were another private business owner right now, it'd be like really pay attention for those things when you're in your branch meetings or you're in your operational discussions. I mean, there's so many opportunities for us to make our people's jobs easier and better for them that we should be really paying attention to every part of our business.
Good, good. I'll just tell you guys briefly how it's affected me as a journalist. I can take a 30-minute conversation and record it. And then I used to have to transcribe that and go back and listen and figure out grab the great quotes and whatnot. AI can take a 30-minute conversation and transcribe it for me and have it back to me in about 10 minutes. That has eliminated that part of my job for me. And then I get to be the creative writer after that point, take those interviews. So it's been profound how it's affected my job. So I'm grateful for it. I want to come back to because I don't want to forget about it, but I want to come back to the poll that we had up. The results came back in. Everyone gave an answer. 57% said that yes, they are using a job planning system, and then 14% no, while 29% said considering. So I've got another question to go around the horn. So stay tuned, because after that question, you're going to see a demo that's going to be something that you'll want to see. But before we get to the demo, guys, I want to ask everyone. And this time I want to start back with you, Ben, if you don't mind. What advice would you give to people attending today about job planning?
Realize that I think you should consider an obligation or responsibility of ourselves as leaders and managers of our work to work with our operations and production people more so than I had the history of doing in my own company. Not just relying on them to figure it all out when they get to the job sites, but instead giving them direction. And if you believe that that's part of your responsibility and job, man, there's some standardizations within the industry that we got to come up with. It's not easy. It's not easy to go out there and give that feedback to the guys, to get them to accept it, and then to track and monitor their progress going forward. It's an incredible task, and I've done it many times, easy and hard ways. And so utilizing technology to do that for you in the future, I think will be an incredible gain for you in your market and within your business, to help give people the feedback that they're actually dying to get from you. They just don't know how to ask, and we don't, as an industry, have a standard way of providing that feedback to our people, except through training. But this is more than training. This is planning, and this is tracking, and this is an expectation that we should give of our people, because we've given them a plan on how to succeed. And so I think if you don't find that to be your responsibility currently in your business, you're probably like most people in our industry. But I think you should really consider being able to plan for that in 2025.
Okay, great. Sashi, any advice you'd like to offer our viewers today?
Yeah, so just to add there, it's definitely at human capacity that we can quickly estimate things. So we know typically a crew can serve 2 to 3 acres, and a crew member and a crew can do 8 acres a day and probably 160 acres a week, and they can generate some 300,000 revenue a year. So these are all the numbers that we circulate in our minds when we look at the crew as a whole core, right? So things are very stereotyped, and we see these results and come out. So it's very normal, it's very usual for someone to think about this in a very standard format, but that's not the case, right? So once we deep dive, once we do a proper scripting for a job, and we realize there are a lot of loopholes there, there are small nuances that we need to look into, and we have to put definitely a bigger lens to make sure that we are closing those gaps, right? So it's definitely a game changer once we start implementing. Obviously, change is something that's very difficult for organizations to take up, but we need to just agree to the fact that we don't leave our entire business to the crews to decide what they have to do on the site, right? So we have to, we are in a very accountable and responsible position where we help them improve their tasks and schedule their tasks and come up with operational tools like job plans to make sure that they are delivering a quality service, right? So again, it's a pure responsibility and accountability thing, and I see definitely it's a game changer since the technology is now doing the major heavy lifting here. So we should take this advantage and move forward to it.
Okay, great. Michael, any advice you want to offer the viewers about what they should think about when they're doing their job planning?
Yeah, I think it comes down to two real big things, that leadership needs to be bought into this process and understand that this is truly a game changer for the company, but that should emanate from leadership. Everybody in the company should feel that this process is the way to do things. And if that feeling is not coming from leadership, it's going to be very hard to get the company to adopt this change, or any change for that matter. And then I think the second piece of that is just accountability, that a lot of times when new things get implemented, it goes well for the first week, maybe the first month, and then people start to kind of rock back on their heels a little bit and say, oh, it's good, like we've made this change, but you haven't truly rounded the corner yet. And then that's when you start to see crews go back to what's most comfortable for them. So the accountability piece and constantly following up to make sure that everybody all through the chain of command is still bought into this, still making changes, still has that feedback loop so that you're continuing to improve, is the most important piece of this. If you throw it out there and let it get implemented and then just don't revisit it, people are not going to continue to do it. So it's that piece of accountability that's the most important to make changes, lasting changes.
Okay, great. All right, Brian, how about you? Any advice you'd like to offer?
I think everyone has said it all here. I think again, it's about leadership, and I think if we're not doing it for the crews have been the one. I don't neglect is probably the wrong word, but the neglected piece in the company, meaning Aspire provided some great efficiencies in estimating jobs, in scheduling of work, in tracking of CRM, and so we've already begun to provide tools for all of the other pieces of the company on how to be more efficient. And then we hand the crew a piece of paper that says 10 hours on it, and we go, all right, hit it. You got to hit those 10 hours, right? And we don't really provide them much more than that. And I know that's an extreme because we do provide them more than that, but the reality is we're doing the crews and our companies a disservice as leaders, as Ben stated, by not doing job planning, by not helping these crews understand how to be more efficient. And again, it's all about, as Michael mentioned, leadership. And if change management works, if the leadership is bought in. And I know I've told the story a million times to a million people, but I had James Martin. I was training over at JMA Aspire, and I had his management team in the room, and James wasn't ever going to log into Aspire, but he came in one day and said, we took a pause in the meeting, and he stood up and he said, "Can I say a few words?" And I said, "Sure, your company, go ahead." And he said, he says, "I want you all to know that you're the best of the best here at this company, and I picked you all to lead this project because you are the best of the best." He says, "And I know this is going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. You're going to complain about it." He says, "But when you walk out of this room, you smile. And when somebody approaches you in the hallway, you say," and they say, "How's it going in there?" You say, "It's going great. This is going to be the greatest thing ever for our company." Right? He said, "Do you know why you're going to say that? Because that's the person you're going to be training tomorrow. And if you tell them that it's hard and change is horrible for our company, guess what they're going to do? They're going to fight you tooth and nail all the way. They're going to complain about it. They're going to tell you that job planning is, they can do much better than you can, and you're never going to get buy-in." So the leaders, as Michael said, have to lead the company, because if you don't walk out of that room with a smile and say, "This is going to be great for our company," and it is going to be great. Ben talked about it, 15 to 20% on larger jobs. Oh my God, right? That's huge. So, embrace this. It's a part of our industry and what we need to be doing, and technology is really going to help get those people that are considering it in that last poll to say, yes, we're doing job planning.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. We have one more poll question that's about to pop up. So we'll have that pop up, and then we're going to go into the demo of the presentation. So here's a pop-up. Take a second to read this, and we'd love to get your votes on this. So after you take that poll, go ahead and vote. And then during the demo, if you have a question, there's the Q&A box. I want to thank Colleen for a recommendation of Wave. I'll check that out. And thank you, Naiwar, for letting us know about Daniel. Thank you, Leslie. We were sorry to miss Daniel as well, but it happens. We were happy to get the group together. We got together here. So we'll have the results of this poll soon. And from here, I'm going to let, I believe Sasha's going to take over the presentation here, and she can give us all a demo to check out.
Hey, thanks, Seth. So maybe I'll start while the poll is going on. And we'll have more time for Q&A if there is any. So you can type in there, or you can ask questions. Let me share my screen. Okay, you guys can see my screen? Okay. Perfect. So again, I'm not going to do any live demo. We can follow on with the live demo once you're interested in what we're doing. So the whole idea is, can we have plans quickly, scalably for all the properties? So traditionally, companies have several properties that they are servicing to. So what is that we're talking about when we say job plan? Essentially, we are looking at some 3 or 4 line items. So one is we wanted to create optimal path for the crew within a property. Once the crew enters a property, our screens are off. We don't know what's happening beyond that, right? So once they reach the car park lot, then we expect the crew to perform what they have to perform. And they've been told the services they have to do, and they've been loaded with the piece of equipment in the truck, right? So what this job plan essentially does is it gives a clear definition of the things to be done there, with clear visual markings and clear representation of their sequence of events using tools like Gantt chart. So on the screen, if you see, there is a map view where we have a heat map. Heat map represents what individual crews have to do. So there is a clear representation of Tech 1, Tech 2, and Tech 3. These are the individual crew members and what activities they need to do. And we also have a budgeted estimate for each service. So for hard edge, how much time they will take. So this includes all the travel time that they need to do within the property. So considering an optimal path of motion within the property. So we come up with this estimate. So here, if you see, we have estimated 4 hours, 20 minutes of job for the crew. This is the total man hours. So individual crew members spending around an hour, 10 minutes there, or hour, 20 minutes there. They will be spending around 3 hours, 40 minutes together, put together. But we have estimated a 4 hours budget. So one more tech, if he joins this crew, if it's a 4-man crew, he will do the detailed jobs, right? So this gives an overall snapshot of what we need to do in the property. So there are 2 attributes that significantly is detailed here. One is the Gantt chart. Gantt chart gives a different perspective of the crew. So Gantt chart lays down the types of services they are to perform in a sequence, right? So here we are saying Tech 1 has to do string trimming, and then he has to do cleanup blowing. Tech 2 has to manage the large stuffs using his 60-inch, then he will do cleanup blowing, followed by cleanup blowing. Then Tech 3 will do all the small turfs, probably with his 52 0-ton, and he will take the hard edging and follow on, right? So we are clearly defining what individuals have to do and when they have to do. And so in that way, there is no confusion on on the orchestration of workflow on the site, right? So there is a clear message to the crew. And also in a job plan, we have other attribute called a flow map. Flow map is nothing but, again, it'll give an optimal path of motion for an individual crew member for a specific service they need to perform in a very visual manner. So I'll just show you a picture. So here, if you see, this is more for a hard edging service. So the crew, we have numbered the paths to sequence it. So we know where he has to park, and then from where, how he has to navigate the property. So this representation tells what is the optimal path the crew can take within the property without any major dead walking in the property, so that his steps are minimum and he is efficiently navigating throughout the property to complete his tasks, right? So this way, we can capture the clear message for the crew. So, and we can train the crew that if you take this approach, you can complete this hard edging in 27 minutes with a travel time of 7 minutes, right? So we can be so specific, and we can give this feedback to him. Again, we have a visual representation and a map view showing the sequence of his travel, and also a budget estimated for this activity, right? So this how a flow map will help. And the other representation that I was talking was the Gantt charts. Gantt charts, there is a nuance in the Gantt chart. Gantt, when we do a very traditional estimate, we calculate the production time based on the measurements, right? So we know this is so many acres. So we know 3-man crew is going on. So we know that we are using a 60-inch, then knowing the production factors, we come up with a budget. But that's not how it actually relays back when we fit the services across the crew members. So when we put a Gantt chart, you can see some inefficiencies right away. You can see that everyone is not equally loaded. In this case, these are minor, but in some properties, you will see that one of the crew members has completed his job some 30 minutes before the rest of the crew, right? So meaning to say that they're going to wait there, they'll have some idling time before the rest of the crew completes and they have to travel. So that kind of inefficiency is creep in. And then what happens is they will end up shooting up the budgets, right? So you will see the estimated production time was 3 hours, but the crew is spending 4 hours there. So the reason is there is no balance of act between the crew members, and you will see certain crew members are loaded differently because probably they're using a mower, their job can be done quicker, or they are not given enough services. So there is not a balanced act on the property. So this Gantt charts gives a visual feedback beforehand for to analyze, to understand if we split all the services across the crew members, and if we put a visualization as a Gantt chart, then we know exactly how individuals are loaded and how efficiently we are making use of the resource, right? And if we see there are gaps, then we can either improve the type of equipments that we load in the truck, or we can add a service, a detailed job in the route, right? So that we don't have to send a specialty crew in that week. So this way we can optimize a lot of things when we look into the details and spread the activities across a Gantt chart. Gantt chart is a very powerful tool, visualization tool. The way that we look at things, it's the same data, but when we represent as a Gantt chart, we understand the nuances and we can improve the operations much better. So the tool that we are proposing here is capable of generating these Gantt charts and this optimal flow maps for any given property at scale, right? So once we have the boundary maps for the property, we run through algorithms, and we understand the production factors, we understand the equipments used there, we understand the number of crew members in a crew, and once we feed in this data, this software is going to give us feedback on what is the optimal path for each service and how the Gantt chart is going to look if we're going to orchestrate the job across a 3-man crew or a 4-man crew, right? And it becomes more easier when there are variabilities creep in. Like say, for example, there are seasonal jobs, or there is, in the fall, you're reducing your crew size, say from 4 men to 3 men. So all these variabilities, when it creeps in, it's very cumbersome for a production team to come up with an estimation on how much time essentially they require, or what kind of equipments they require to be loaded in the truck. So again, a plan will be a key plan. A blueprint would be very much helpful to quickly evaluate the situation and come up with an improved version so that we can translate the information as a blueprint to the crew and train them accordingly. Right. So heat map is again a part of it, where we provide a color coding for individual crew members, and we put it across on the map. We say, okay, crew 1, he goes with the blue color, crew 2 goes with the cyan or a pink color, whatever it is. So it's a visual representation. Again, it's ease of communication. So we give this kind of deliverables part of the software, where the crew can be easily informed of their individual activities and where they have to perform. So the activity service split scope can be easily defined. So we have cases where there are 2 blowers operated simultaneously in the property. So how do we differentiate them? How do we communicate to them that who has to do which side of the property, and so on? So the heat maps play a vital role. Again, this is one of the deliverables we get from the tool, where we can easily represent visually. It's a visual aid for the crew for their training purposes. So these are the nuts and bolts of the software tool. Once we have these inputs, this kind of deliverables can be brought in quickly from the tool, and from there we enable the production operations team to wisely look into those Gantt charts and improve their operations. The human touch comes in, where we decide, okay, we are using our 52-inch. The usage of 52-inch in this property is very less. Probably we need to assign 52-inch to following turfs, and we can improve their time, and we can reduce the overall time spent by the crew in the property. So these kind of decisions can be quickly made once we have this visual aid, and the production team can fine tune their plans and improvise the plan on spot, and have again a trainable data set for them to hand over to the crews, so that the crew know exactly what they have to do when they have to do. Right. So that's how this tool becomes very powerful. We enable the production team and operations team. We give powerful visuals for the crew leaders, and the crew members, and we communicate with ease, and we help to do the heavy lifting by doing scientific calculations and significant algorithms running behind to find out the optimal paths and so on, right? So the major stuff is removed from manual actions. The manual actions would be more improvising the plan depending on the company needs. This is a simple case study, so that there is a quick understanding. One more big loophole here is the traditional question that we get is, okay, we got a plan. How do we make sure that the crews are sticking to the plan? So what kind of assurance that we get that we are asking crew to do mowing for 2 hours or edging for 1 hour? How we make sure that this is happening? So this is leading into our second solution that we provide, which is the Intel, which we are not discussing much on this webinar. We will take it in the consecutive webinar, but the case study here is a quick snapshot. So a company did a budgeting of 14 hours. They budgeted a job for 14 hours, and they have seen an average clock in, clock out of 12 hours. That's how they've been doing it traditionally. So when we implemented Crew Planner and provided job plans for their property, we evaluated the job to be done within 8 hours, right? So 8 hours, 40 minutes was our proposal. And just to prove what's happening on reality, we implemented our smart safety vest, which is capable of capturing the actual production. It's like a clock in the hand. It's very similar to what we have in traditional days. This is very automatic. We source the data from the crew directly. So here, if you see, we have noticed that the crew is really capable of completing the job in 8 hours, 30 minutes, and 20 minutes. We have seen some weeks they have really pulled out the job within the budget that we thought it should be, right? So if you see further from the crew intel, these were the takeaways that we had. So the takeaways were the crews were able to complete the job 8 hours, and sometimes they were sticking to the budget because they were being budgeted for 14 hours. They can complete the job within 8 hours. So there is a significant improvement that they can do. And we have seen that they are not using same type of equipments for certain services. Say sometimes they use 60-inch, sometimes they use 52-inch for the same turf. And we have also identified that crew makes multiple visits for the same property. And sometimes we have seen the crew are waiting for job to complete. One crew member is waiting for the other to complete the job. So all these insights are telling us that the crew can do the job much more better. So we can happily see easy 2 to 3 hours of savings for 14 hours worth of job that we are doing there. So again, the data is powerful. We need to capture, and the way that we capture and give a feedback for continuous improvement of plan is, again, the safety vest that we are working on. We will dwell into this detail later. These are some screenshots. We enable the crew with this kind of vest, and we capture the actual production data, and we know how much time they're spending for each service they're doing within the property, whether they are mowing, whether they are edging, whether they are blowing. We capture actual hours spent by the crew members on each service, and we see there is significant intelligence that we get as a feedback, where the biggest takeaway is the crews are sticking to the budgets that we are providing, though they can do it much faster, or they really need more time than our budgets. That's very apparent and clear from when we collect the data of operations in real time, right? So this way we close the loop. We can week on week we can understand how the crews are improving their operations from the plans that we provide. We benchmark from the plans, and we fine tune the plans over a period of time. Yeah. So if there are any questions, I think we are running out of time here. So if there are any questions, we can take, or we will follow on with a webinar series on crew intel next time.
Awesome. Thank you, Sashi. It does look like we have one question, and if you want to go ahead, if you have time for another question, if you do, because before we jump into that question, I want to discuss the results of the poll. I'm pulling those up now. We asked, what's the biggest challenge your company faces in managing day-to-day operations? And by a landslide, 42%, inefficient scheduling and crew management. I guess there's a reason we were all here. Number 2 came in with effective uses of resources. That was at 26%. Managing seasonal jobs and detail work was 16%. Difficulty in job planning and scripting was 11%. 5 of you were managing well, no major challenges. Congratulations. And then lack of technology and automation, 0%. So there's the results there. One last call for questions, but in the meantime, I will throw this one out. Sashi, do you want to touch on what variances are you seeing between your current users' estimated budgeted hours versus your optimized plans expected total hours?
Yeah, so we have seen both the extreme cases. Sometimes we have seen they have under budgeted for sure. There are cases where we have to improve the budget, and there are cases where there is no opportunity for us to optimize some 20 to 30%, right? So that's a variable. We have seen bigger numbers as well. That's again the scope that it's not an apple to apple comparison that we can do, because the crews do multiple tasks, not only just the maintenance tasks. They also do some specialty works or some detail works, right? So again, as much as possible, if we do an apple to apple comparison from the plan that we give, we see happily some 20 to 30% improvement that we can establish with a proper job plan. Yeah,
okay,
if that
great.
answers. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you taking the time. There's been a lot of great institutional knowledge in this webinar and some great ideas shared. It looks like we've got one. Check out the chat box at the end there. Okay, we would like to. Okay, no, that's already been covered. So guys, at this point, I just wanted to mention one more time that Daniel says he's sorry. He would have loved to have been here with us. He did the rehearsal with us, and we've talked about this, and so he expresses his regrets for not being here, but we understand. I want to thank Michael Mayberry, Brian Morris, Ben Collinsworth, and Sashi Kumar for joining us on our webinar today. I'm Seth Jones with Landscape Management Magazine, and I hope you guys all have a great season and appreciate y'all.
Thank you.